You guys have read the title of this video. It's a Star Wars tier list. Let's get into it. Well, before I get into it, a couple disclaimers. As always, these are just my opinions about these films and shows, so again, if you believe something different and you believe that a certain film should be put in a different tier, let me know in the comments down below, but also know this is just my opinion and you are perfectly entitled to have your own. And also, just a quick aside, I am filming and recording this video before the Mandalorian Season 2 is finished, so unless the last couple episodes are just atrocious, I'm pretty confident in my ranking of the show in this tier list. That being said, something bizarre could happen. I don't know. And thirdly, yep, major spoilers for every movie and show on this tier list, so if you haven't seen any of them, you've been warned. If you haven't subscribed already, then please make sure to do so for some more content, some more tier lists, rankings, reviews, and without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the original, Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope is going, of course, in the S tier. I mean, just the fact that this movie was made over 40 years ago, that just blows my mind. Because, okay, you could obviously nitpick things here and there, like for example, the Obi-Wan versus Vader fight is honestly pretty funny to watch now because they're just kind of poking each other with glow sticks. And yes, some of the dialogue is a little bit weird, like Luke Skywalker is being whiny. It's kind of funny. On the other side of the spectrum, Attack of the Clones is going in the D tier. Now look, as with all of the prequel films, in my opinion, I think there are good parts of each movie. I'm not one of those people who think everything about the prequels is just straight garbage. I think there are good things, to varying degrees, about each one of those films. That being said, a lot of Attack of the Clones is just terrible. And I think a lot of it centers around Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala, which unfortunately George Lucas decided to make basically the brunt focus of that entire movie. And that is unfortunately one of the worst things that the Star Wars live-action films basically ever did. I don't doubt Hayden Christensen is a good actor. He has been in films where people have praised his performance and the films have done well critically. He is a good actor. Unfortunately, he is not a good Anakin Skywalker in my opinion. And his chemistry with Natalie Portman, who again is also an unbelievable actress, as we know from films like Black Swan, something about their chemistry didn't work, or maybe it was just the dialogue, or both. Because both were pretty terrible. George Lucas's dialogue was atrocious.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
And then on top of that, the general plot of the film is kind of a disaster. Yes, the ending is cool on Geonosis where all the Jedi are coming out and fighting and you get to see thousands of lightsabers just flicking through the air. That's pretty cool. But how did we get there? Some Jango Fett plot to assassinate Padme with worms, and then some conspiracy theory of Obi-Wan going to Kamino, and then Geonosis, and then Anakin somehow getting roped up into this. Oh, and by the way, his mom dies, but the movie kind of just ignores that after it happens, even though that's kind of a big deal, I think. I just think Episode 2 Attack of the Clones is basically the epitome of what went wrong with the prequels. A bad casting in Anakin Skywalker, bad dialogue, poor plot, some neat visuals, some decent action, pretty good use of CGI, though it looks really outdated. If you watch the clones in Attack of the Clones, they look really fake. And overall, just a confused mess. That's all I can say about the film. The first TV show on this list, Star Wars Rebels, I'm gonna put in the B tier. I am not one of those people who absolutely adores this show. In fact, I am one of the people who actually thinks a lot of it is just pretty mediocre, to be quite honest. This show was definitely geared more towards kids. And a lot of that had to do with the writing. The jokes with Zeb, with Chopper, with Ezra, they were very much in the nature of the prequels, in my opinion. Whereas Clone Wars had some of that with Jar Jar Binks, obviously, they were also able to explore some really dark themes. And when Rebels tried to do that, it worked some of the time, but most of the time it was a pretty big miss. And to be honest, a lot of the stories in Rebels were pretty forgettable. Look, I'm not going to deny that the season finale of Season 2 and the episode with Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Maul are probably two of the greatest episodes of Star Wars television ever. The way that Ahsoka versus Vader played out is masterful. Dave Filoni put all of his care and attention into that scene, and it shows. Brilliant scene. And the Maul versus Obi-Wan subplot that finally came to a conclusion in Star Wars Rebels, I thought was really expertly handled as well. I just think that there isn't much outside of those things as well. Dave Filoni didn't get me to care about characters like Kanan, like Hera, Sabine, as much as he did with new characters in the Clone Wars like Ahsoka. And I don't think it's necessarily a good thing when my favorite character of Rebels was Ahsoka, who had been established in the Clone Wars for 6 previous seasons before Rebels. On top of that, the protagonist of Rebels, Ezra Bridger, I think is awful. He is basically everything about the prequel Anakin that I disliked. He is whiny, he is insistent on his own views, he is stubborn, He makes terrible decisions over and over again. He never learns from his mistakes. And did I mention he's whiny? Because every single episode he's whining about something. So at the end of the day, look, Rebels is fine. I wouldn't put it in the C tier because I think it does deliver on some of the biggest promises and biggest moments of Star Wars canon ever. Again, the Ahsoka versus Vader fight is just beyond S tier. But overall, it's pretty forgettable. Yes, even with Thrawn, who I think was sort of mishandled. He goes after the Rebels and he fails time and time and time again until he finally gets sucked into a worm tentacle portal with Ezra Bridger. Star Wars Resistance I'm going to put in the C tier. And just being completely honest, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the show because I've only seen a little bit of it. And from what I saw, it was not great, but it also wasn't for me, I don't think. I just don't think the show was made for people like me, and that's fine. I think the show had some really interesting ideas, and it could have been a next Star Wars Rebels, but I just don't think it was really ever there. So, C tier. Return of the Jedi I'm going to put in the A tier. And that may be an unpopular opinion. Look, I think Return of the Jedi as a whole is a great, successful conclusion to what is one of the best trilogies in cinema history. I think it does exactly what it set out to do. That being said, I also think that it really does show that George Lucas sort of ran out of ideas at this point. He has his whole trilogy planned, The Empire Strikes Back is phenomenal, and then he goes, okay, well, I need Luke to redeem Vader and defeat the Emperor at some point. So that part is set in stone, and that part of the movie is excellent. The Emperor throne room scene, absolutely phenomenal. How we get there, a little more questionable. The whole Jabba's sail barge scene is fun, but it's a little inconsequential. It's just an action scene, I guess. And then Yoda dies, and then they show up as Force ghosts. Okay, great. And then this whole subplot on Endor with the Ewoks. Now, okay, say what you will about the Ewoks. They are cute, yes, but they are also Ewoks. It's like if in The Last Jedi, the Porgs were given a pivotal role in defeating the First Order. That's sort of how I equate it, because the Ewoks were basically pivotal in defeating the Empire, and I'm not exactly sure how to feel about that. And then to really put the nail in the coffin, George Lucas was like, well, I don't have anything else to do, so let's put a second Death Star in there. Because, okay, I guess. But at the end of the day, this is still Star Wars, this is still original trilogy quality, so all of those things sort of bump it down from the S tier, but this film is still great. I know some people think that this is the best in the trilogy, and more power to them, but I just think that some of these things maybe weigh down the film a little more than the other two, but this is still a fantastic conclusion to a fantastic trilogy. Revenge of the Sith I'm going to put in the B tier. Just like how Attack of the Clones embodies everything wrong about the prequels, I think Revenge of the Sith embodies what could have gone right with this prequel trilogy. Now again, there are a lot of not great moments with Revenge of the Sith. I think some of the dialogue is not good. I think Padme dying of a broken heart is not good. I think Jar Jar Binks giving emergency powers to the Emperor is really not good. And yeah, the dialogue, did I mention the dialogue? Don't make me destroy you, Obi-Wan. Okay. But the other parts of the movie are actually really good, and you can tell that unlike Return of the Jedi, in my opinion, where George Lucas, it seemed to me, kind of ran out of ideas, it seemed like George Lucas was saving everything in the prequel trilogy for this one film. And this was the story that he wanted to tell. And it shows. This film has pace. This film has a snap to its step. The opening action sequence right away is basically better than anything in the previous two films, I think. And even Hayden Christensen's performance has improved pretty significantly, I think. I think there are some parts where he just is given some horrible dialogue and he doesn't deliver it well, let's be fair. But you can tell he has a little bit more personality, and his friendship with Obi-Wan is pretty apparent. And then just the descent into Darth Vader, I don't really buy into him turning to the dark side right after he throws Mace Windu out a window. Great. But you can kind of tell where the brushstrokes were, where George Lucas wanted to take the story, and for that, I have to give this movie credit. And also, while the duel on Mustafar was heavily choreographed, it's still pretty fun to watch, right? Rogue One, I'm going to put in the A tier. It's no secret that I really enjoy this film. I think, yes, the characters are not the strongest part. Like, you're not going to remember Cassian Andor or Bodhi Rook after you walk out of the film. Not really anyways. But the story and the guts that this film has to literally kill off all of the main characters, and the ending and the final battle, I think really cements this as one of my favorite Star Wars movies ever made. For all of the production troubles that this film went through, it doesn't really show. I think this film is pretty airtight, to be honest with you. The action is phenomenal. I think even the score, even though it's not John Williams, Michael Giacchino, is pretty good as well. This movie just has a pace and an airtight plot and some phenomenal action, and this is a war movie. This really puts the war in Star Wars. And I have a great time watching this movie. Again, I don't really get attached to the characters, so when they die, it's not a huge deal to me. But just the fact that they were able to do that and do it pretty successfully, major kudos. Solo, a Star Wars story, I'm going to put in the C tier. This is about as forgettable can get, to be quite honest with you. Aside from the Darth Maul stuff, which, great, I love Darth Maul, but that was kind of out of nowhere, okay. There's not much I remember about this film. Like, Enfys Nest, does anyone remember who Enfys Nest was? Probably not. I know a lot of people like this film, and to be fair, I didn't have a terrible time watching the movie, but I saw it once in theaters, and that was enough for me. The theatrical Star Wars The Clone Wars movie, yeah, I'm going to put in the F tier. Look, I'm not going to lie, if I factored in nostalgia into this, I would probably put in the C tier or something like that. Because this movie has some sentimental value to me. I'm not going to deny that. But, yeah, just thinking about this movie and what it did and how bad the animation was and how bad the story was, like delivering Jabba's son to the Hutts, okay? Yeah, this movie is just awful. And what's more incredible about this is just the fact that Dave Filoni was able to take this, which was, again, supposed to be a couple episodes that were just strung together, and turn this show into one of the most phenomenal things about Star Wars ever. So that's impressive, at least. But yeah, this movie on its own is bad. It's really bad. However, Star Wars The Clone Wars, the show, I'm going to put in the S tier. I think after the original 6 films, this is easily one of the best, if not the best thing that came out of Star Wars. This show is truly phenomenal. Now again, the beginning of the show is not great. The animation is really poor, but it's 2008, so who can blame them, I guess. But even then, getting us to care about a different sort of version of Anakin Skywalker, who I immediately gravitated towards, and to this day, Matt Lanter's Anakin Skywalker is my definitive Anakin. I made a whole video about that, check that out in the description down below. Anyways, and then getting us to care about this whole different character in Ahsoka Tano, who ended up being just a fan favorite character. Unbelievable. Like, she's in The Mandalorian now. Who would have thought? All these things the show did well, developing the clones and giving them personalities, developing Ahsoka Tano, developing the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, developing the relationship between Anakin and Padme, which is something the prequels could not do. Showing the rise and fall of Palpatine, bringing back Darth Maul successfully somehow, and even giving him a brother, developing the Mandalore plot, which is, again, a huge part of Star Wars now, and exploring some really darker themes. This really isn't a kid's show for most of it. I mean, there is Jar Jar Binks, but we're going to ignore him. And this show did so much for Star Wars that just made the prequels worth watching, in a sense. Maybe not, but it made Star Wars canon so much more rich, and Star Wars to this day is being able to reap the rewards of this, with Bo-Katan even appearing in The Mandalorian. The Darksaber is a big part of The Mandalorian. Like, that's crazy. These were all things established in Star Wars The Clone Wars. So you may not agree with me that this is S-tier quality, but for me, just what it did for Star Wars, and for me personally, the quality of the show is easily S-tier. The Empire Strikes Back is, of course, S-tier. What else is there to say about this film that hasn't been said before? This movie is phenomenal. It takes everything good about Episode 4 and makes it better. It takes the few bad things about Episode 4 and just basically eliminates them. Yes, of course, visually you can tell this is a product of its time, but everything else, you just can't tell. This is a timeless movie. And the Darth Vader twist, it took everything sort of conventional about A New Hope and twisted it and flipped it on its head. The internal conflict of Luke and even the internal conflict of Darth Vader are really, really expertly juxtaposed and make for a fascinating, even character study almost, in an action fantasy space opera. I could go on, and I'm sure so could you, so I'm not going to spend much more time on this, but yeah, it's The Empire Strikes Back. S tier. The Force Awakens is going in the B tier. Like I've said before, look, if you're going to copy a film, basically shot for shot, almost character for character, well, you might as well copy a good film, I guess. Because look, if you're going to copy A New Hope, well, how much worse could that film be? On that level, I don't think The Force Awakens is a bad movie. It's A New Hope, basically. And A New Hope is great. And because most of the dialogue, the visuals, the characters, the casting was pretty good in The Force Awakens, it's a good movie. But it's also A New Hope. So while most people may not think this is the greatest movie of all time, I think this movie is good because, again, it copied one of the greatest movies of all time. Now, where it stands in terms of the sequel trilogy as a whole is a completely different story, but as a film, I think it's good. Star Wars The Last Jedi is going in the A tier. Now, this one is probably going to be the one that most people disagree with. So, again, I personally don't really understand why people hate this movie so much, but that's not me saying that you can't hate this film. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying if you do think this is the worst Star Wars film ever made, more power to you. You believe what you believe, and that's fine. I'm just saying I personally don't understand that, but if you want to talk about it in the comments down below with me, I would love to hear your thoughts. Me personally, yeah, I hate everything about Canto Bight in this movie. Just everything about that subplot with Finn and Rose. I don't hate Finn and Rose, I hate that entire subplot. I think it's terrible. And that's about it. Honestly, I love almost everything else about this movie. And you may disagree with me, I think they handled Luke Skywalker incredibly well. I think this Luke Skywalker is so much more consistent with what could have happened after Return of the Jedi. Rian Johnson did something different, and I have to applaud him for that. And what he did differently, I happen to enjoy. Again, feel free to disagree with me in the comments, but this is how I feel. I feel that Rian Johnson did an excellent job of subverting expectations in a way that wasn't necessarily so jarring, like the Snoke death, for example, that it made sense in the grand scheme of Star Wars. Up until that point, at least, because after that happened, well, yeah, Snoke is a clone now. But anyways, I'd love this movie. If I could cut out everything about Canto Bight, I would. But other than that, I love this movie. The most recent bit of Star Wars, The Mandalorian, I'm going to put in the B tier. Like I mentioned before, the season's not done as of the recording and finalizing of this video, so unless something truly horrific happens, I'm probably not moving it down, and unless something truly amazing happens, I'm probably not moving it up either, so I'm pretty comfortable with it being in the B tier. Because look, so far, I think Season 2 is a pretty big improvement on Season 1. It takes the things I didn't necessarily like about Season 1, and while it doesn't necessarily vastly improve all of them, it does improve most of them, and I'm happy about that. Because, and I've said this before, I wasn't the biggest fan of Season 1. I think it was fine, and it did a good job in most episodes, but there are just things in there that I didn't like, just being completely honest. However, it ended on such a strong note with Taika Waititi's finale that I was excited for Season 2, and yeah, so far Season 2 is delivering for the most part. I mean, Frog Lady notwithstanding, I don't get that episode, but whatever. And so, again, unless something just absolutely bizarre happens in the last couple episodes, I think that Season 2 is pretty much A material. I think Season 1 is lower B material, and so I'm going to put it in the B tier for now. This could change with more seasons, obviously, but I do enjoy The Mandalorian for what it is. The Phantom Menace, I'm going to put in the D tier. Rather than talk for 5 minutes about every single thing I hate about The Phantom Menace, I'm just going to say this. A little while ago, I tried to rewatch all the Star Wars films in the Skywalker saga, all 9 of them. And you start chronologically with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So I turned it on and began watching. The first 10 minutes, I was like, this is okay. I think the aliens are bizarre. Their accents are pretty offensive, but the story was okay. And then about 20 minutes in, Jar Jar Binks appears. I kid you not, 5 minutes after he was on screen, I shut the movie off. I couldn't deal with it. That's basically what I think about The Phantom Menace. I think, again, there are good things in there that are buried underneath a pile of just whatever George Lucas was thinking at the time. And finally, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, C tier. I've made a whole video about why I think Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars film, and what I mean by that, go watch the video, link in the description below. What I mean by that, in short, is it doesn't fit in the Skywalker saga narratively. It's just this odd puzzle piece that doesn't fit based on the 8 previous films that came before. Whether that's Rian Johnson's fault, J.J. Abrams' fault, Kathleen Kennedy's fault, who's to say? I don't know, but this movie just doesn't fit. But, as I said in that video, structurally and as a 3-act individual film, ignoring everything that came before, which I know is hard, I think this movie is fine. I'm gonna say it, I think this movie is fine. If you disagree with me, great. Totally fine, let's have a discussion below, but I think this movie is fine. Once you start connecting things to each other, like Emperor Palpatine's return, Snoke clones, Kylo Ren and Rey kissing at the end for whatever reason, that Star Wars canon decided to call a kiss of gratitude. okay? Then you really start to get into why this movie doesn't work fundamentally as a Star Wars film, but as a film, it sets up a bad guy, it sets up an even bigger bad guy, the bad guy turns and helps the hero defeat the bigger bad guy but sacrifices himself. It works. But I digress. I know a lot of you are going to disagree with me, and that's totally fine, but I'm going to put it in the C tier. So that was my tier list for all of the major Star Wars movies and shows up till this point. There's going to be some more exciting stuff coming out. I know the Bad Batch is going to come, and Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie is going to come. But for now, this is what we got. At the end of the day, to me, being a Star Wars fan is less about the quality of each film and each show, which I know is kind of a weird thing to say as a sort of critic, but being a Star Wars fan is just embracing the lore and embracing the universe and just allowing it to be what it wants to be. At this point in time, it wants to be a Western with an adorable baby child. So, yeah, let it be what it wants to be. If it wants to be a Taika Waititi directed film, great. If it wants to be the Old Republic, then great, honestly. Please make an Old Republic saga, but that's what Star Wars is, and that's why it will remain relevant for years and generations to come. So what did you guys think of my tier list? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a like. If you like this video and you want to see some more tier lists, then comment down below, leave a bunch of comments, a bunch of likes. That'll let me know that you guys want to see more of these tier list videos. And if you want to check out some more videos, then check out the videos on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.